"Mom and Dad, maybe you should head home early." My son said that. At his own wedding. Right there in the middle of a luxury resort where a single night could burn through an entire year of my salary. I was holding the check in my hand. My wife stood just behind me, pushed out of the family photo, like the two of us didn't belong. The irony still stings. I was the one being avoided in that room, and I was also the one about to make the entire ceremony fall silent. If you're listening to this story right now, take a moment to subscribe to the channel and leave a comment telling me where you're listening from, at home, on the road, or in a quiet moment that belongs only to you. Because what happens next begins in that very silence. I remember the feeling clearly. Not the cold from aspen snow, but the cold of being treated like I didn't exist. The reception hall was vast, glowing with warm lights. Laughter everywhere. Glasses clinking. The scent of expensive perfume. Firm handshakes between people who knew each other well. A world I had never belonged to. Mary and I stood side by side right against the glass wall overlooking snow-covered pine trees. No one came over. No one asked if we needed anything. Strangely enough, I wasn't surprised. I just felt empty. Tyler and Jessica passed by us several times. Every time their eyes drifted somewhere else, as if even a glance in our direction might ruin the perfect picture they had worked so hard to create. I watched my son smile brightly while talking to men in long wool coats, discussing shares, opportunities, the future. But when he walked past his own parents, that smile vanished. Quick, clean. Mary squeezed my hand. I knew she was holding herself together. She had chosen the simplest dress she owned, pressed it carefully the night before. She told me, "It's our son's day. Let's not do anything that makes this hard for him." I nodded. Back then, I still believed silence would be enough. But that silence didn't last. Eleanor Sterling appeared in front of us, as if she had been waiting. Her eyes traveled slowly over me, stopping at my old leather shoes, the ones I wear to every important occasion. She smiled, but it wasn't a welcoming smile. "You arrived quite early," she said lightly, her voice soft as air but loud enough to be heard. "I just hope you won't disrupt the atmosphere. Today's guests are very carefully selected." Before I could respond, she turned and murmured something to a nearby security guard. I didn't catch the words, but I saw his eyes shift toward us. Measuring, alert. That was enough. I understood. Mary lowered her head. I felt her hand tremble slightly. I wanted to say something, but I didn't. I was used to being judged by appearances. I had lived with it my entire life. It just hurt more this time, because it was my son's wedding. Tyler pulled me aside, away from the crowd. His face was tight, not emotional, just irritated. He wouldn't look me in the eye as he took a folded piece of paper from his jacket. "Dad, take this," he said, quickly lowering his voice. "So you and Mom can head back to the hotel early. It's not convenient here." I opened it. A check. $5,000. A neat rounded number, like a clean ending to a conversation. I looked up at my son. He still wouldn't meet my eyes. "Most of the guests today are big players," Tyler went on. "If you stay, they won't understand. I don't want to have to explain." I folded the check very slowly. Not because I needed time to think, but because I didn't want my feelings to show. I slipped it into my pocket carefully as if it were something important. "Okay," I said. One word, enough to calm him. Tyler let out a breath like he had just finished an unpleasant task. He turned away immediately. No questions. No congratulations. No hug. I stood there watching my son disappear into the crowd. Mary stepped closer and whispered, "Are we really leaving?" I shook my head, very slightly. Not because I wanted to make a scene. Not because I wanted to prove anything right then. I just felt that if I left that way, some doors would close forever. Some questions would never be answered. I looked around the hall one more time. Stone walls. High wooden ceilings. Radiant floor heating. I recognized the sound of the system right away. Everything here felt strangely familiar, even though no one knew who I was. I thought about what Tyler had said. Not convenient. Maybe he didn't realize this. Some places are built to impress, and some places are built to test people. I stood there between the white snow outside and the warm golden lights inside, asking myself quietly, who was it really that didn't belong here? I didn't go back into the reception right away. Not out of anger. I just needed a few minutes to breathe. I guided Mary into a side hallway where the lights were softer and the music faded into a distant hum. She asked if I was okay. I told her I was. I've always been honest with my wife. Some truths just don't need every detail spoken. I helped Mary sit on a bench near the window, then walked slowly down the stone hallway by myself. I wasn't trying to act familiar, but the place spoke to me anyway. Small details surfaced without effort. A stretch of flooring sounded different underfoot. A sign the heating below wasn't running evenly. In the corner, an old painting hung slightly crooked, hiding a control panel. Only someone who had installed it would ever notice. I stopped for a few seconds. No one paid attention to me. To them, I was just an older guest who had wandered off. Back in the main hall, the celebration continued. Laughter rose and fell. Handshakes lasted longer than necessary. From a distance, I saw Tyler deep in conversation with a group of men a few years younger than him, his face eager, his eyes searching for approval. I'd worn that look once, a long time ago. Then something went wrong. The music cut out without warning. The large screen behind the stage flickered a few times, then went black. The lively atmosphere sagged. Quiet murmurs spread just enough to disturb the smooth illusion they were working so hard to maintain. A group of technicians rushed in. They leaned over the equipment, whispering tension written all over their faces. I stayed at the edge of the crowd. I didn't want attention, but even from there, I could see the problem. It wasn't serious, just a loose connection probably caused by a sudden temperature change. A very small issue. But at an event like this, small issues are enough to bring everything to a halt. Jessica appeared moments later. She didn't ask what was wrong. She asked how long it would take. Her voice wasn't loud, but it was sharp. I saw a young technician's shoulders tighten as he said they needed more time. No one noticed me stepping closer. I crouched slightly and glanced at the back of the unit. I didn't touch it right away. I watched. My hands are used to that. Before fixing anything, I always listen to what it's trying to say. I pulled a paperclip from my jacket pocket. An old habit. I adjusted one small contact point, gently. Just one movement, nothing more. The screen lit up again. There was no applause, just a shared exhale. A few people nodded to each other, as if this was how it was always supposed to go. I stepped back, ready to return to Mary. "What are you doing here?" Jessica's voice came from right behind me. I turned. She looked at me like something that didn't belong in this space. There was no curiosity in her eyes, only suspicion. I didn't finish. "This is a technical area," she cut in. "It's not for outsiders. You're not authorized to touch anything." One of the staff started to speak, then stopped. I understood. In places like this, money speaks first. "It's fixed," I said, calmly. Nothing was affected. Jessica didn't look at the screen. She looked at me. "I don't care what you did. I care about who takes responsibility if something goes wrong." I nodded. "Then you can rest easy." She signaled for security to step closer. Not to escort me out, just to remind me I was being watched. I turned away without another word. I've learned when to step back. When I returned to Mary, she was standing near a group of people I didn't know. They were taking photos. Mary stood at the edge, trying to smile. Then someone whispered something. Mary stepped back. The frame closed. She was edged out, gently but firmly. I saw her shoulders sink. I walked over and placed a hand on her back. Mary didn't cry out loud. She just turned her face away and quickly wiped the corner of her eye. In that moment, something inside me was touched. Not anger, a deep, quiet disappointment. "Let's step outside for a bit," I said. We walked onto the terrace where snow fell steadily and the wind moved softly. No one followed. In that white glow, the resort looked different. Less polished, more real. Mary spoke quietly. "Maybe we shouldn't stay." I stared into the open space ahead. I thought about the check in my pocket. I thought about the way Tyler turned his back. I thought about the look in Jessica's eyes, like I was a hidden threat. "Not yet," I said. "Not now." Mary didn't ask anything else. She's always trusted me in the quietest way. I knew it then. From the moment I adjusted that tiny connection, things had already begun to shift. No one noticed. But important things usually start that way, silently, without noise. And I also knew this. When people grow used to seeing someone as invisible, they're never ready for the moment that person is finally called by name. We went back into the hall once the reception had settled again, as if the disruption had never happened. The music resumed smoother than before. People quickly returned to their familiar roles, laughing at the right moments, shaking the right hands, saying the things everyone expected to hear. Mary and I took our place at the edge again, unnoticed. By now, that had almost become the default. A middle-aged man stepped onto a small platform near the stage, holding a microphone with the ease of someone used to speaking in public. I recognized him as a member of the Sterling family's advisory board. His voice carried calmly, reassuring. He spoke of unexpected good news, that the Sterling Corporation, after a difficult period, had finally secured backing from a private trust fund, that the investment had not only saved the company from shutting down but opened the door to a much larger future. I glanced at Mary. She didn't follow every term, but she understood the mood. Faces lit up. Nods spread through the room. Excited murmurs followed. Money has a way of making people forget many things, even what just happened moments ago. Tyler's name was mentioned. The advisor called my son the bridge, the one who didn't give up the key factor that allowed Sterling access to the mysterious trust. I saw Tyler straighten his shoulders, lifting slightly. Jessica held his hand, smiling at those around her, like this was the moment she had been waiting for. Eleanor didn't bother hiding her satisfaction. She stepped forward and asked for the microphone. Her voice was clear, confident. She spoke about family, about lineage, about how the right connections always find each other. Then she turned to Tyler and placed a hand on his shoulder, a gesture of confirmation. "This," she said, "is proof that we placed our trust in the right place." I stood still. I wasn't angry. I felt a very deep silence inside. Everything was unfolding exactly as I had expected. When people believe they've won, they tend to speak more than necessary. That's when I saw him. A man in a dark gray suit stood near a side entrance. He wasn't part of any conversation. He wasn't smiling. He wasn't holding a drink. He simply stood there with a slim briefcase in hand, his eyes scanning the room as if searching for a fixed point. I recognized him immediately. Not because we were close, but because I knew that stance. The stance of someone who knows how to wait, unhurried, unnoticed. He saw me, just for a brief moment. But it was enough. He walked toward me, not fast, not slow. When he reached me, he stopped and inclined his head slightly. Not a show, just the right amount of respect. "Mr. Miller," he said quietly, "my apologies for arriving late. The documents are ready." The sound in the room seemed to slow, not because he spoke loudly, but because people nearby had heard him, and when a sentence doesn't fit its surroundings, it draws attention on its own. Tyler turned. Jessica did too. Eleanor frowned. "I think you're mistaken," Tyler said with a smile, stepping forward. "You must be looking for someone else." The man didn't respond right away. He looked at Tyler, then back at me. "I'm not mistaken," he said. "We've communicated in writing, and according to schedule, I need the final signature today." Jessica laughed softly. Not loud, but enough. "What a strange performance," she said. "What did you hire him for?" A few scattered laughs followed. I didn't look at them. I looked at Tyler. For the first time that evening, my son didn't avoid my eyes. But there was no recognition there, only irritation. "I don't know what you're talking about," Tyler said to the man. "But this isn't the right time." "Sir," the man replied, his tone unchanged. "I'm not here to speak. I'm here to conduct business." He turned to me and extended the briefcase. "If you permit." I didn't take it right away. I kept my hands at my sides. I knew that with one small movement, the direction of the entire room would shift. And I wanted to be sure Mary was steady. I looked at her. She looked at me. No questions, no worry, just the familiar gaze of someone who has walked beside me my whole life, through moments when words are no longer needed. I nodded. The man opened the case and removed a thin folder. On the cover I saw words I knew well, a name I hadn't heard spoken aloud in many years. Miller Trust. Eleanor stepped forward. "Excuse me," she said, her voice less certain now. "You're interrupting our family's celebration." The man turned to her, polite. "Ma'am, according to our records, your family is a temporary beneficiary, but the owner of the trust is present." The room fell quiet, not out of respect, but because no one was sure how to react. Tyler turned to me, his voice lowered. "Dad, what are you doing?" I looked at my son. For the first time that evening, I no longer felt pushed aside. I only felt a clear distance between us, built not by money, but by things left unsaid for far too long. "I'm standing here," I said. in my rightful place. And I knew then there was no turning back. What had been hidden behind silence for so many years had begun to reveal itself on its own. No one asked for the ceremony to stop, but it stopped on its own. The people closest to the stage began stepping back instinctively, as if the space needed to make room for something about to happen. I stayed where I was. The man with the briefcase did too. Only Tyler kept looking around, searching for something familiar to lean on. But there was no one left willing to stand beside him now. The host walked onto the stage. I saw the hesitation in his eyes. This wasn't part of tonight's script. He glanced toward the Sterling family, waiting for a signal. But before anyone could respond, the man beside me stepped forward and whispered something to him. No one heard the words. They only saw the host give a small nod. The microphone crackled, then steadied. "Ladies and gentlemen," the host said, trying to keep his composure. "Before we continue, we have a special introduction." Whispers spread again. I heard my name somewhere behind me. Not clearly, but clearly enough to dismiss coincidence. And now the host continued, looking down at his card as if checking one last time. "Please welcome the owner of Aspen Peak Resort and the sole representative of the Miller Trust, Mr. Robert Miller." In that moment, everything went still. Not the silence of respect, but the silence that follows when a familiar order has just been broken. I heard someone draw in a sharp breath, a glass set down too hard, footsteps stopping mid-stride. I didn't step forward right away. I turned to Mary. She tightened her grip on my hand, saying nothing. There was no surprise in her eyes, just a faint concern, the same look she gives me whenever I'm about to face a difficult choice. I climbed the steps one by one, slowly, not for effect, but because I was no longer in a hurry. The entire room was watching me, yet I didn't look at them. I looked ahead into the cold, clear light above the stage. When I reached the host, I heard a laugh escape from Tyler. Short, forced. "This is ridiculous," my son said, loud enough for a few to hear. "What are you doing, Dad?" I didn't answer right away. I accepted the folder from the man beside me and opened it unhurried. I knew that now every movement was being weighed by dozens of eyes. "I didn't come here to disrupt your day," I said evenly. The microphone didn't make my voice louder, just clearer, and I'm not here to prove anything. I turned a page. But there are things that, if not spoken at the right time, will continue to distort everything around them. I looked down at the room. Tyler stood stiff. Jessica wasn't smiling anymore. Eleanor had stepped back, her lips pressed tight. "This resort," I continued, "was not a random investment. It has belonged to my family long before it was called Aspen Peak. I never claimed it publicly, because I didn't need to." Murmurs rippled through the crowd. I caught the words, "No way." I didn't stop. "The Miller Trust is the same," I said. "It wasn't created to impress anyone. It was created to protect what I spent my life building." I turned to Tyler. "You tried to access the trust," I said without accusation. "You submitted documents. You signed my name." The air froze. Tyler shook his head immediately. "No," he said quickly. "I didn't do that." "I'm not here to argue," I replied. "Everything is documented, and documents don't need emotions to exist." I placed the folder on the table beside the host. The man who came with me stepped forward, opened a page, and pointed to a few lines. No one read them aloud. They didn't have to. Jessica stepped forward. "You're blowing this out of proportion," she said. "This is a wedding." I looked at her. "I know," I said. "That's why I stayed silent for so long." Another pause. Longer this time. "I don't want my son defined by what he tried to hide." I continued, my voice unchanged. "But I also can't keep letting silence erode the values I believe matter." I closed the folder. "Any legal decisions will be handled after tonight," I said. "Not here." I turned to the host. "The ceremony may continue." No one applauded, but the host nodded like someone finally allowed to breathe again. The music resumed, slower, more cautious. People began to move to talk quietly, their eyes still drifting back toward me. I stepped down from the stage. Mary came to my side. She didn't speak. She simply rested her hand on my arm. I felt her breathing had steadied. Behind me I heard Tyler call out softly. I couldn't tell if he was calling for me, or for something that had already slipped from his grasp. I didn't turn around. I knew the hardest part of this evening wasn't on that stage. It was waiting in what would come after the lights went out. The music was still playing behind us, but it no longer reached me. Mary and I walked slowly out of the hall. No one stopped us. No one saw us off. The glass doors closed behind us, leaving the warm golden light inside. and the quiet cold of the snowy night outside. I took a deep breath, not to steady myself, but to be sure I was still standing. Tyler called out again. This time his voice wasn't strained. "Dad, wait!" I stopped. Mary stopped too. She didn't turn around, but I knew she was listening. I turned back. Tyler stood a few steps away. Jessica was behind him, gripping her fur coat, like it was the only thing keeping her from slipping. Eleanor wasn't there. Perhaps she chose to stay with the crowd, where things could still be explained in her favor. Tyler stepped closer. For the first time that night, he wasn't holding his posture. His shoulders sagged. "I didn't think it would go this far," he said. "I just wanted things to be better." I looked at my son. I didn't see the familiar arrogance, only the fear of someone who had placed too much faith in things that don't stay still. Better for who, I asked. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't need to. Tyler stayed quiet. Jessica bit her lip, then spoke slower and much softer than before. "We were wrong to look down on you," she said. "But if everything closes now, we'll lose everything." I nodded. "I know. And because I knew I had thought long and hard before letting things reach this point. I didn't come to this wedding to destroy my son's future. And I didn't come to reclaim anything that had never truly left my hands. I won't withdraw what I've committed to the Sterling Corporation," I said. "The trust will continue its support. The contracts will remain in place." Jessica let out a breath like a narrow door had just opened. "But I continued the way you stand inside it. We'll change." Tyler looked up. "What do you mean?" "You won't represent the trust anymore," I said. "Not as punishment, but because you don't yet understand the value of what you were holding." No one spoke. I let the silence sit there long enough that it couldn't be misunderstood. "You'll start over," I said. "Here. Not on a stage, not in a boardroom, but in the places you walked past today without seeing." Tyler frowned. "What do you want me to do? The work that needs to be done," I replied. "Maintenance, inspections, cleaning, learning to listen to systems that operate in silence. No title, no privilege." Jessica opened her mouth, then stopped. I looked at her. "And you," I said, "you can stay, but not to direct, only to observe." Tyler nodded faintly, not in agreement, but because for the first time there was no easy option left. In his eyes I saw something I hadn't seen in a long time. Humility just beginning to take shape. We didn't say anything else. We didn't need to. I turned away with Mary and walked slowly toward the snow-covered path. Behind us, the party continued, but it belonged to another world now. A few weeks later, I signed the final papers, not to expand, but to narrow. I transferred most of my assets into a fund for elderly people, with nowhere left to turn those who worked their whole lives and were forgotten once they were no longer useful. I didn't put my name on it. I left only a single short instruction: use the money to open doors, not to lock them. Mary and I moved into a small house. Bright enough, warm enough. No security, no packed schedule. In the mornings, we drank coffee by the window. In the afternoons, Mary tended her flowers. I fixed small things around the house slowly, carefully, the way I've lived my whole life. Sometimes Tyler calls. He doesn't say much. He talks about what he's learning, about things he never noticed before. I listen. I don't lecture. Some lessons only come when a person learns to bend down on their own. On the first night of winter that year, the snow fell thick. Mary and I held hands and walked along the small road in front of our home. No sparkling lights, no music, just the steady sound of our steps on white ground. I thought about that night in Aspen, about the eyes that once passed over us. I felt no bitterness, only lightness. Some bridges are built for others to cross, but the ones who build them always know, every nail, every joint. And when the time comes, they also know how to take them apart. Not to make anyone fall, but to remind us that every road begins with respect. I squeezed Mary's hand. She smiled, and this time the silence between us wasn't cold anymore. If you've walked with me to the very end of this story, thank you for listening with patience and understanding. If this story made you think, please like, subscribe, and share, so real stories like this can continue to be told and reach more people. The message I want to leave you with is simple. A person's value isn't defined by where they stand, but by what they've quietly built. Never look down on those walking slowly behind you, because they may be the very ones who cleared the path you're walking on today. Thank you for being here.